We've heard the allegations, but now we brought in lawyer Christopher Melcher to break down how scared should Lizzo really be. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor. If you missed part 1 of my video, I would start there. I broke down the whole document and we went through the basic allegations. All the main important parts were broken down so you could see it in its entirety. But now we have Christopher Melcher, attorney at law. So happy to have you here, sir. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, good to be back.
This is interesting. I think a lot of people surprised Lizzo is this positive, body positive force out there that everybody's, always impressed by. And now, this is painting her in a much different light. This lawsuit's come forward with some severe examples and accusations rather. But as I went through, I had a lot of legal questions because for me, a lot of it felt like, well, yeah, this isn't right. This is morally wrong, but you're a freelance employee. And I imagine some of this was just sort of choice. Some of it's during a reality show, which they've signed the rights away. I'm curious here, your overview of, is this actually a worthy lawsuit here? And should Lizzo be worried?
Well, definitely she should be worried because she's been sued, and whether it's a good lawsuit or not, she's going to have to now defend it. And this is extraordinarily expensive. So we're talking potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees that she would have to pay unless she has insurance. So there's special insurance that employers can get. And I'd highly recommend any of you, if you're business owners, to look into it. It's called Employment Practices Liability Insurance, EPLI. So if you're running a business, this is probably the best insurance to have. If you have no claims, it's very inexpensive. But if you have a claim, it is pays its weight in gold for that premium. So here, she's going to have to hire lawyers, have to defend this. And obviously, her reputation is at stake now, too. So the thing is, when you're running a business, especially in California, you are subject to a lot of responsibilities as an employer. And one of them is to make your workplace safe. Now, that doesn't, it's not limited to employees. It also extends to anyone who's providing services for your business under a contract. So we have a duty as employers to make sure that anyone coming in contact with our employees or contractors, that they are free from this type of, alleged harassment. And so there's strong protections there. And so the complaint is alleging that all these rules were violated. Now, the thing to keep in mind is it's just the plaintiff's side of the story. It's these 3 individuals through one lawyer who typed something up.
Not to interrupt you, but you made a point. I want to make sure we don't skip it. This was also released by the press. This was released to the press in a pristine copy, you were telling me, right?
Yeah, this is, obviously no surprise to anyone that leakage occurs, but whenever you're looking at a court document like this, that purports to be a court document, look up at that upper left-hand corner, and if it's been filed, there's going to be a header up on top that's, at least if it's a California case, it's going to show that it's been filed by the court, and it's going to have a case number there about mid-page. Stamped on it, so it's going to show that it came from the court, or that it's now a court document. This is a pre-filing document, so they could only
filed. It seems like it was filed by deadline.
Yeah, so this could have only been created by the attorney who typed it up, and they leaked it. So it's not like it could have come from the court clerk because the court clerk didn't even get this document.
Which again points to this might have been a shakedown, an attempt to get the press of this, and maybe even a settlement. Is that potential?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely calls into motivations. Like, hey, if all this stuff happened, then sure, go ahead and sue, make your claim, but why be so noisy about it? And there is a lot of shakedown element in any of these celeb cases where it's the threat, like, hey, we're going to make this claim and you better pay us so you're not embarrassed. Now, the other thing is that Lizzo would have known about this months, potentially 6 months ago. So in California, before you can file a claim like this, you have to get a right to sue letter. So first you take it to the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, say, hey, this occurred to me, and give them the opportunity to go direct, and file their own enforcement action. A lot of times they don't. They decline it. They give a right to sue letter. So Lizzo and her lawyers, everyone has been on notice of this for at least 6 months. And so I would expect her to come out swinging here with a strong denial of this. And she, again, should be completely prepared to do it. Now, some people don't do that and they say, hey, no comment, we're going to litigate in court. But this is not being litigated in court. This is being litigated in the media. So I would hope that she comes out, if she's denying these allegations, with some photos, texts, videos that would show that, hey, these things that the plaintiffs are complaining about, that they were so harmed by, that they were seemingly having a lot of fun in, or maybe even suggested. We don't know, because we've only heard one side of the story so far.
Yeah, at time of taping, she still has not released it. We did pre-tape this a bit due to Christopher's schedule, so it may have come out and we'll give you updated, but as of taping, we did not have a response. All right, so as we've gone through the allegations, if you missed them, watch the first video because it's a lot, guys. But just to give sort of a broad view of my questions here, like the first part really does focus on the reality show, and they admit to being, doing psychological examinations. They also signed this waiver of, what's it called? The disclaimer, like basically admitting that any of it can be used against them and given to production. Do these accusations during that phase hold as much weight? It seems like they've pretty much signed their rights away, no?
Well, what they're trying to, the reason why they're saying that in there is it's a thing called eggshell plaintiff theory. Okay, if you ever went to law school, this is the kind of stuff we learn about. But basically, what this theory is that if the defendant here, Lizzo and her production team, knew that the plaintiff had anxiety and depression, then they have to be more careful. And they also have to understand that things might damage that person greater than someone who didn't have those challenges in their life. So basically what they're doing in the complaint here is setting it up and saying, look, to participate on the reality show, we had to submit ourselves to psychological testing. That information was shared, and what came out with this one person, they struggle with anxiety, depression, and binge eating. So now that's placed Lizzo on notice that if you stress this person out a lot, that it may have more harm than you would expect. So they're on notice. And again, eggshell plaintiff is like, if the person has a eggshell and they fall down, they're going to get hurt more than the person who has a harder shell of armor. So
it makes sense.
To be more careful.
Smart. Okay. This understood then. So it's added there to really set you guys knew this. There's a lot about complaining about Miss Quigley's religious preaching and proselytizing. Is that, what is that? I mean, is that legal?
Well, see, the thing is, again, this is the problem. Like if you, in the entertainment industry, and especially these kind of productions here or operations that are, I'm going to say, relatively smaller in terms of not like in a studio setting, things happen that would never happen if you worked in the corporate environment. So if you work for Wells Fargo or something like that, people are showing up in suits. They're not going to, burlesque shows afterwards, and they're not doing any of this kind of stuff. It's very, very, everyone knows, like if you look at somebody wrong, you're going to get sued. But in these more informal environments, things happen and that shouldn't. And so what they're claiming here is that Quigley was out there talking about her religious beliefs and pushing that on these other plaintiffs here, and that Quigley was in a position of power. She was like the captain of this crew or whatever, and so she had power. Lizzo apparently, maybe knew about it. We don't know that, if Lizzo was actually aware of it, but Quigley was placed in a position of power over these three individuals. So, it's just inappropriate in a workplace to try to institute someone's religious beliefs, a supervisor's religious beliefs onto a contractor. And then
right, but let's keep it real, right? It has to, religious beliefs or there's certain places you have to be able to check on the box for wrongful termination and stuff, right? And that would be one of them. So the fact that she was out there preaching a lot is one way to deduce and say, oh, well, it's because I wasn't that way, when it might be a bit of a stretch, no?
Well, it went beyond, just saying, hey, I'm a Christian and this is what I believe in. Do you believe in it too? To being extremely overbearing is what, again, it's all that's alleged in there. I don't vouch for any of this, but is this what was alleged in there? And then also that there were and again, we get careful with our language, but that Quigley, despite the fact that she was proclaiming
Religious
to
was
have
also
these
very
strongly
adult.
held religious beliefs, that
Yeah.
she was engaging in some
Explicit
vulgar
dialogue.
and explicit dialogue. And so that certainly would be a violation of employment laws that would apply to an independent contractor. And then also that one of the plaintiffs had revealed that she was
She had her V card.
yeah, she had her V card, and then that was made public. So
Right,
there's a
and to
lot
be-
of
I was playing devil's advocate just trying to get these questions, but I agree. During the reality show, I could see some of that being like, well, that's part of the show. That's what every reality show does. But yeah, now they're employed and on tour and it's still being asked and all that stuff. That's when things can get even more hairy, I imagine, because now they're employees officially on tour. They're still being at all this religious pressure, all these V card questions. These are things, even if you're not a full-time employee, you just can't be asking your workers, I guess. Yes?
that's just the thing. It's boundaries. It's common sense. It's like they're not friends. There's a contractual relationship between the plaintiffs and Lizzo or Lizzo's production company. So, again, it's like we have to have boundaries in that such situation, and it's not a surprise if those boundaries are breached that there's going to be a claim. Now, so legally they get in the door. There's no question. They get in the door with this lawsuit and they get to potentially, a jury trial. Now, but the thing is that it kind of seems that what's really driving this is not the shows that they went to and the statements that were made to them. It was that the production was on and off again. And when it was in the off period, they were unemployed basically, but we're being told like, hey, you better not take other jobs because we may resume production. We may need you immediately. So they're kind of on hold, and other people apparently got some kind of retainer payments to keep them,
Correct.
alive basically while they're waiting. And these folks didn't, and eventually they got, 25% or something like that.
Yeah, they negotiated
instead of
40 or 50, got 25, and it's. I agree. It seems like that's where a lot of this frustration and anger with the employees, and there could be some disgruntled frustration of why weren't you paying me? Were they obligated to pay for these soft holds? No, right?
No, not at all.
And as I said, like it's an employee's job to ask for more and demand it, and if you don't get it, you don't get it. A worker exploiting their employee and not paying bonuses isn't mean it's illegal, right? They shouldn't do that to their employees, but they're not going to pay extra unless asked for. So that's where I'm confused. A lot of this does seem like there was a frustration and a disagreement on what they should be getting paid. Do you get that vibe too?
That, to me, that's what I'm picking up on, is what they're really upset about. That these other things that they're complaining about for the other, like 40 pages of this thing about the shows and the comments, I'm sure those were, let's say those were upsetting events to them, but would it have gone to a lawsuit had they been paid? My guess is no. And my guess is what primarily is driving it is that they were not only subjected to comments or whatever things that bothered them during the relationship, is that they were put on hold and not given a check and expected to just wait around until the production resumed without payment. And that's really what's driving it. Now, the thing also is like, let's just assume everything in this thing is true. Let's take it at its extreme. How are these people damaged by it? Maybe psychologically they're damaged by it. I think it would be difficult to be in this career. Again, I gave the banking example, and that's much easier. If you're going to be a banker and it doesn't work out at Wells Fargo, you go to Merrill Lynch or you just go down the street. These places are dime a dozen. But if you're in the entertainment business, it's so difficult to break into. And if you get a bad rap or name at one production, you're probably never getting hired anywhere else. So these people have tremendous power over people trying to get into the industry. So I understand they're very vulnerable. But again, okay, so they went to a couple shows that were they were uncomfortable and embarrassing. Let's
call it what it was. They were in Amsterdam going to the red light district with an employer that they know is overly aggressively, makes them uncomfortable. It does feel like they put themselves into situations that they should have known don't go to if they're uncomfortable. That's where I guess I'm confused legally. Lizzo shouldn't be putting her coworkers into this environment. I get it. I'm not trying to. She needs to be held accountable for that. But your employer's doing it. At what point should the employee just keep pressuring themselves to follow along instead of just leaving the job. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, or just saying like, "Hey, I'm going to pass tonight. I'm not going. Don't feel great, or whatever." Or just make an excuse and bow out, and that maybe. But again, let's just assume all this happened at the most extreme level, like just like here. We know,
We're
Lizzo
talking about
just
the Amsterdam banana stories. Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, all that. Let's just assume, because I'm also assuming Lizzo denies it all. But let's just assume miraculously this was all proven to be true. Like if I'm on the jury, I'm like, okay, how do I translate that into dollars? Like, how do I? So I'm like, I feel sorry for you. I understand like what you're saying, and you were hurt by this, but like, how do I give you dollars for that? That's the part that I'm confused about, and maybe they'll make that case. But again, it's not like Lizzo did something directly horrible to these people, like we're seeing, these other stories we've covered, where it's like, oh wow,
Yeah, there's definitely a narrative of this story, and it's all building up to just all these things of that paints her in the most negative way. And I think that is something everyone needs to step back and understand. This is obviously their side and not Lizzo's side. And like I assumed in the first video, there's probably somewhere in the middle. So yeah, it keeps going. There's a really weird part where they blame racism and fat shaming, and I have real big trouble understanding where it comes from. But there's a portion there where they're saying that it had to be racism and fat shaming because the other dancers didn't get that. But then later Lizzo shames them all in the same room, and I don't understand. Did any of that speak to you at all? Does that seem like it's a valuable complaint?
Well, like I say, this is kind of a kitchen sink complaint. That didn't need to be this long, so that's another thing that we have to kind of be mindful about. In California, we're called a notice pleading state, so technically all you have to allege is, I was an independent contractor, I was exposed to a hostile workplace, and caused me to suffer damages.
Well, let me push, because that's interesting. If they had done that, couldn't they have then pressured to get a settlement money and actually maybe avoided all this going public for Lizzo's? Wouldn't that have been a better legal move, maybe?
Well, they already did that with the right to sue letter. So what they would have done is,
yes.
So they would have gone to California.
And she denied it. Yeah, she must have ignored it or didn't want to do it, and now this is all coming out.
Yeah, and this complaint, like I say, it doesn't need to. All we have to state in the complaint, like you could sue anyone for anything. You just have to type it out and saying like, I'm suing you for these causes of action, and you state what's called the ultimate facts. So it doesn't need to be 40 pages. So why do they put that in there? Well, because they want the media to pick up on it. Obviously, they leaked it to the media. So, this is the shaming part of the lawsuit. But again, now the damage is done. There's going to be stories about it here, and then it's going to die out. No one's going to talk about it. And they've played their card. So, they had their bullet, they've shot it. So that's, maybe a tactical mistake on their part. But at this point, if I'm Lizzo, I would come out with a strong defense, because I got to imagine at these events, if you want to call them that there's video, audio, and photos. And there's probably text messages. Oh my God, yeah, let's meet up here and there, like anyone does in a group that goes to things like this. So it's like, get that evidence out there, show, if true, that these were voluntary participants, that they didn't have a problem with it at a time, and they're just trying to make a problem out of it because they want money. And then the thing dies and it all goes away.
That's clearly what's going to happen, because there's a lot of in there, like, it wasn't forced on us, but we felt pressured to. There's a big narrative on the pressure that these employees felt. And that carries through to the fact that one of them was recording conversations because of a disorder. I still can't judge. What? How on earth would she think that's okay for a celebrity that one of the dancers is recording the most stressful situations? There's a lot of weird justification written in this to sort of attempt to justify why they were doing their own issues, which it does sound like these workers were probably, either maybe it was because they were uncomfortable or whatever, but this clearly was not a job suited for them. Is there really a worry here, or Lizzo can sort of show, yeah, they wanted to be at these events. Here's the photos. This is all nonsense. These are disgruntled employees. Leave me alone. What do you expect will come out of this with Lizzo's response and the future?
Yeah, I don't think Lizzo gets harmed by this. Like I say, even if it's all true, what we're talking about is extremely poor judgment. This isn't Weinstein, Masterson, Cosby,
R. Kelly, right?
Or, yeah, I mean, all the stories that you've all unfortunately
It shows her as a
seen.
bit of a hypocrite. She's going to take a hit, but it's all with haters that would have hated on her anyway.
Yeah, it's just like I say, my view out of it is, again, if it all happened the way that the plaintiffs say is, then it's like, hey, Lizzo, you're operating a business in California. You have to have boundaries. You have to use common sense, or you're going to get sued. And so that's the takeaway. I don't think that, like I say, it's the allegations are all over the place in this thing, but it's not like she's done the things of these other people that I've mentioned that are obviously going to be shunned forever, properly so.
Do you think she'll have to pay any money?
So in my
Does she settle it?
senses-
Does she try to push this all the way through? What do you think?
No, I think that ship has sailed. So I think that, perhaps there were offers made earlier. I don't know. But at this point, once it's gotten here where there were attempts made to quietly settle, or opportunities to quietly settle, and those are blown, and now you have a lawsuit, full on leakage to the media with explicit allegations, she has no real incentive to settle. So, she can't keep it quiet. It's out. So I think at this point, it's just a matter of legal fees. And, like I say, I'm struggling with how to quantify in dollars the damages that these folks suffered, even if their story is true. So it's not like it's going to be some multi-million-dollar judgment or something like that. So who knows? I mean, she may throw some money at it at some point just to avoid paying the lawyers. But at this point, my sense is that she would just defend it and rather pay the lawyers than pay out the plaintiffs.
Interesting. So she should be worried. This isn't helpful, and interesting take. The eggshell defense also smart. It does. Again, I still stand by. It feels like there's a little bit of both. Clearly, Lizzo was inappropriate. Didn't know how to properly run this business. Hopefully, she now has learned. At the same time, it does feel like these employees were just mad about not getting enough money. Clearly, didn't get along with her and her style, and now have tried to throw the whole kitchen sink at the complaint. And there will probably be some sort of mid ground, which is just, but again, all this money, time, it's a lot. But I'm with you. It's like, yeah, it makes Lizzo look bad, but they put themselves in these situations, and I don't know. There's a part of me that I think we need to stop. We need to start telling people it's okay to quit. I know it's tough. You'll find another job. A lot of people are looking for work out there. Don't put yourself in these toxic situations. And then if they do, then take them a lawsuit. They fired me because I wouldn't agree to do these things. Like, I think we do empower more people to do that. But anyway, it will be interesting to see where this all goes. Lizzo definitely is not feeling good, I imagine. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated on Lizzo's response if we get it, as well as more. I want to hear your thoughts down below. Make sure if you haven't already, follow Christopher Melcher over on Twitter. Any final thoughts or words, Christopher?
No. I mean, it's yeah. I think we covered it, and obviously, if she gives a comment, we'll go ahead and cover that too.
Stay tuned for it. Follow him over on Twitter. Subscribe here if you haven't already. Hit the bell for alerts so you get notified, and tell us your thoughts down below. I saw a lot of you were on Team Lizzo, actually, on the last comments. You think these people don't sound believable? What do you think? Does this change your mind? Tell us down below. Stay tuned for more here on Popcorn Planet.